My mother was 92 years old. One morning she disappeared. My son looked me in the eye and told me she was resting at a friend's house, but his hands were trembling. And when I discovered the truth, I understood that my own son had locked her up, to steal everything from her. It was no longer a family story. It was a crime. If this story touches your soul, subscribe. Every day I upload real stories that could be yours. Tell us where you are watching us from. My name is William. I am 74 years old. And that morning when I opened my mother's bedroom door and saw the empty bed, I knew something was terribly wrong. It wasn't intuition. It was certainty. Like when you know someone died before the phone rings. The bed was perfectly made. Too perfect. My mother never made the bed like that. She always left the sheets wrinkled, the pillow crooked. "Why make it if I am going to get back in bed?" she used to say. But that morning the sheets were stretched tight like in a hotel, and her wheelchair was still there, empty in the corner. Her medications were untouched, her purse hanging on the back of the chair. Everything was there, except her. I left the room with my heart pounding in my chest. I went to the kitchen. My son Jason was sitting at the table drinking coffee, as if nothing was wrong. He looked up and smiled at me. That smile I knew, the same one he used as a child when he broke something and hid it. "Good morning, Dad," he said calmly, too calmly. I grabbed the doorframe because I felt my legs failing me. "Where is your grandmother?" I asked him. My voice came out hoarse, almost without air. Jason took another sip of coffee before answering. She went with Aunt Rose to spend a few days. I stared at him. "When?" He shrugged. "Last night, late, we didn't want to wake you." Something about the way he said it didn't sound right, like when someone tells a lie they rehearsed in front of the mirror. The words came out too soft, too prepared. "My mother doesn't leave without telling me," I told him. Jason put the cup on the table with a sharp thud. "Dad, she is an adult woman. She can go out whenever she wants." I felt my blood boiling. "She is 92 years old, Jason, and she uses a wheelchair." "How the hell did she leave without her chair?" He stood up, walked to the sink, and rinsed his cup without looking at me. "Aunt Rose has a chair at her house." We had already discussed it, but I saw how his hand was trembling. Just for a second. But I saw it. I went to the wall phone, that old device that Eve insisted on keeping because cell phones run out of battery. I dialed Aunt Rose's number. 1, 2, 3 rings. No one answered. I dialed again. Nothing. "She isn't answering," I said to Jason without taking my eyes off him. He put on his jacket, grabbed the car keys. "She must be busy, Dad, or sleeping. You know she sleeps late." And he left. Just like that. Without saying goodbye, without looking me in the eyes. The door closed, and I was left alone in that huge kitchen, with the phone still in my hand. And then I started to shake, not from cold, from fear, because deep down I already knew. I already knew. I went back to my mother's room. I opened the closet. All her clothes were there. The dresses she used for going out, her sweaters, her orthopedic shoes, everything. I opened the nightstand drawer. Her rosary, her glasses, the book she was reading. I opened her purse, her ID, her wallet with old photos, the house keys. Everything was in its place, as if she had never left. But then, where was she? I sat on the bed and grabbed her pillow. It smelled like her perfume, that cheap perfume she bought at the market, and for the first time in many years I felt like crying. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Rage was still holding me up. I called my daughter Grace. She answered on the third ring. "Dad, what happened?" she asked me. She always knew when something was wrong. "Your grandmother isn't here," I told her. "Jason says she went with Aunt Rose, but something doesn't add up." There was a silence. Then I heard Grace take a deep breath, as if preparing to say something she didn't want to say. "Dad, Aunt Rose is in the hospital. She has been there for almost a month. She had a fall." I felt the floor opening up beneath me. "What?" My voice came out like a muffled scream. "I thought you knew, Dad. I told you 2 weeks ago. But I didn't remember. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to remember." I hung up without saying goodbye. And then yes. Then I cried. I got up and started searching. I opened drawers, closets, checked papers. I was looking for something, anything that would tell me where my mother was. I found old bills, photos, letters from years ago, but nothing recent. Nothing that explained this nightmare. I went to the living room and saw the house phone. I dialed the hospital number. St. Vincent Hospital, a female voice answered. I need to speak with Rose Benavides. She is my sister. The woman typed something on a computer. Yes, Mrs. Benavides is admitted here, but she cannot receive calls. She is in recovery. I squeezed the phone so hard I felt I was going to break it. Since when? 3 weeks, sir. I hung up and screamed. I screamed until my throat hurt. Jason returned that night. He came in with a bag of food and left it on the kitchen table. I brought roast chicken, he said, as if nothing had happened. I was sitting on the sofa, in the dark. I hadn't turned on the lights. I hadn't eaten. I had just been sitting there trying to understand. I called the hospital. I told him without looking up. Jason stood still. I heard him breathing. So? He asked. I stood up. My knees cracked. I walked toward him slowly. Aunt Rose has been hospitalized for 3 weeks. Jason left the bag on the table. Dad, you are confused. I got closer. We were face to face. Where is my mother? He looked at me without blinking. I told you. She is with her aunt. Don't lie to me. My scream filled the house. Jason took a step back. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes. Not fear, but calculation. As if he were measuring how much he could tell me, how much he could keep lying. Dad, calm down, he said, raising his hands. You are upset. Sit down. Let's talk. But I didn't want to talk. I wanted answers. Where is she? I repeated. Jason sighed, as if I were an annoying child. Okay, Dad, I swear. She just needs to rest for a few days. Far from here, I felt something break inside me. It wasn't just the lie. It was the way he said it, as if I were an idiot, as if it didn't matter. Get out of my house, I told him. Jason blinked. What? I want you to leave now. Jason looked at me for a long time. Then he grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around. Dad, you aren't thinking clearly. We will talk tomorrow, when you are calmer. And he left. The door closed softly, almost without noise, and I remained standing there in the middle of the living room with my heart beating so fast I could feel it in my temples. My son had lied to me. My mother had disappeared, and I had no idea what to do. I sat on the sofa and looked at the empty wheelchair, and for the first time in my life I was afraid of my own son. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed sitting on the sofa, with the lights off, staring at the closed door of my mother's room. I thought of Eve. She always defended Jason. Always. When I told her that our son had something dark inside, she silenced me. He is your firstborn, William. Don't be unfair. And I listened to her. I always listened to her. But Eve was no longer here, and neither was my mother. I got up at dawn without having closed my eyes even once. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. My hands were shaking so much that I spilled the water. And while I cleaned the mess, I swore something to myself. I was going to find her, no matter what I had to do. I was going to find my mother, even if that meant destroying my own son. There was a Sunday, 2 years ago, when this house was still alive. It was my mother's 90th birthday. Eve got up at 6 in the morning and started cooking. I watched her from the bed, putting on the pink apron she only used on special occasions. Go back to sleep, she told me, smiling. But I got up too, because I liked seeing her like that. Happy, busy. When I went down to the kitchen, the smell of freshly baked bread already filled the house. My mother was sitting in her chair, peeling potatoes next to Eve. The two of them were laughing about something I didn't understand. What are you laughing at? I asked them. My mother looked at me with those eyes that were still bright. Women's things, son. You wouldn't understand. And they kept laughing. At 11 in the morning they started to arrive. First Jason, with Sarah and the kids. Beatrice came running in and hung from my mother's neck. Great-Grandma, happy birthday. Ben brought a drawing he had made at school. A drawing of all of us, with bright colors and exaggerated smiles. My mother stuck it on the fridge with a magnet. It is the most beautiful thing I have seen in my life, she said, kissing the boy's forehead. Then Gabe arrived with his wife. They came in quiet, as always, but they brought flowers. Grace appeared half an hour later, carrying a huge cake that almost didn't fit through the door. And Johnny called from overseas, his face pixelated on the cell phone, singing Happy Birthday with a weird accent that made us all laugh. The table was full. Plates, glasses, food, hands grabbing bread, voices overlapping. Eve served the stew, and my mother told her, "Don't give me so much, Eve, I can't eat it later." But Eve filled her plate anyway. Jason was at the head of the table, telling Gabe about a new business he was setting up. "This time it is going to work," he said, with that confidence he always had. Sarah watched him in silence, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I observed them from my chair, and in that moment, with the house full of noise and life, I thought, this is happiness. I didn't know it was the last time we would all be together like that. After eating, Jason stood up to give a toast. He raised his glass of wine, and we all went silent. "To Grandma," he said, "the strongest woman I know. She raised us all, and now she watches over us from her chair with that wisdom that only age gives." We all applauded. My mother had tears in her eyes. Eve squeezed her hand. But I saw something strange. I saw how Jason looked around the house while he spoke, as if he were evaluating, calculating, measuring the value of things. Sarah noticed it too. She got up from the table and went out to the garden. I followed her. "Are you okay?" I asked her. She looked at me with tired eyes. "Mr. William, your son is changing, and I don't know if it is for the good, but I didn't want to listen to her." 6 months later, Sarah left. She took Beatrice and Ben. Jason showed up at the house one Saturday morning with red eyes and wrinkled clothes. "She left," he told me, sitting in the kitchen. "She said she can't stand me anymore, that I am a failure." Eve hugged him. "You are not a failure, my son. You are just going through a difficult time." But I said nothing, because I knew Sarah was right. Jason was changing. Every business he started failed. Every promise he made was broken. And every time he came back home, he came back angrier, more desperate. My mother looked at me from her chair. "William, help him," she told me. And I, as always, nodded. A year later, Eve started feeling bad. At first it was just tiredness. "It is old age," she said, downplaying it. But then she started to cough, a dry, deep cough that woke her up at night. I took her to the doctor. They sent us to do tests. I waited in the waiting room while they took x-rays. When she came out, her face was pale. "What did they tell you?" I asked her. She grabbed my hand. "Nothing yet. We have to wait for the results." But I saw the fear in her eyes, that fear that cannot be hidden. A week later, the doctor called us. "You have to come in. We need to talk." And I knew. Before arriving at the office, I already knew. "It is pneumonia," the doctor told us, looking at the x-rays against the light. "But it is complicated. At her age, we have to be very careful." Eve squeezed my hand tightly. The doctor kept talking, using words I didn't understand. Antibiotics, oxygen, monitoring. But I only heard the buzzing in my ears. They admitted her that same afternoon. I stayed with her. I slept in a chair next to her bed. Or I tried to sleep. Because every time I closed my eyes, I heard her coughing. My mother came every day. She sat on the other side of the bed and held Eve's hand. "You have to get out of here, honey," she told her. "This family needs you." But Eve was getting weaker every day. I called the children. Grace arrived the next day. She took a week off work and stayed at the hospital with us. Johnny flew in from overseas. Gabe came after his shift. But Jason always had an excuse. "Dad, I have an important meeting. I will go tomorrow, the next day. Traffic is impossible. I will stop by at night. And at night, the kids need me. Tomorrow for sure." Eve waited for him. Every time the door to the room opened, she looked up expecting to see him, and every time it wasn't him, her face dimmed a little more. One afternoon, with a barely audible voice, she told me, "Don't be hard on him, William. Jason is under a lot of pressure. I thought it was kindness, but it wasn't." Eve died on a Thursday. I was reading the newspaper to her. I read her the news every day, although she could almost no longer respond. I was in the sports section when I noticed she had stopped breathing. Just like that. Suddenly, without warning, her hand, which was holding mine, went limp. "Eve?" I said. "Nothing? Eve?" I touched her face. It was cold. I called the nurses. They came running, but there was nothing to be done. I stood there, standing next to the bed, looking at her motionless body. 52 years together. And she left like that, in silence. As she was, I called the children. Grace was in the cafeteria. She came up crying. Johnny took a taxi straight from the airport. Gabe arrived in an hour. Jason answered the phone on the fifth ring. Dad, I am busy. Your mother died, I told him. There was a silence. I am on my way. He arrived the next day, at the funeral, with a wrinkled black suit and an unshaven face. Sorry, Dad, he told me, hugging me quickly. I found out late, but I had called 3 times. I had left him messages. During the burial, his phone didn't stop ringing. I saw him answer twice, walking away from the group, talking in a low voice. When we threw dirt on the coffin, Jason didn't even cry. He just looked at the phone. My mother was by my side, leaning on her cane. She grabbed my arm and whispered to me, Your wife would have forgiven him. But you don't have to. I said nothing, because I didn't know what to say, because deep down a part of me was already starting to understand who my son really was. After the funeral, the house emptied out. Everyone left, and I was left alone with my mother. We sat in the living room, without speaking, looking at Eve's photos on the wall. William, she told me, after a long while, now it is just you and me, but we are going to be okay. I nodded, but I didn't believe her, because nothing was going to be okay anymore. The first few months we tried to maintain the routine. I cooked. She helped me peel vegetables. We watched television together at night, but the house was too big, too quiet. And then Jason started coming. Dad, I came to help you, he said. He brought food, stayed to eat, offered to fix things. And I, like an idiot, opened the door because I thought maybe Eve was right. Maybe he just needed time, but I was wrong. And when I realized, it was already too late. 2 weeks after the funeral, Jason knocked on the door on a Sunday morning. He brought a woman. Dad, I want you to meet Fiona, he said, entering without waiting for an invitation. She was young, maybe 35 years old, skinny, with dyed blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore tight jeans and high heels, as if she were coming to a party and not to visit an old man in mourning. Nice to meet you, Mr. William, she told me, extending her hand. She had long nails, painted red. When I shook her hand, she squeezed hard, too hard. My mother was in the living room, sitting in her chair. Fiona approached and spoke to her as if she were a child. Hello, Grandma, how are you? My mother looked her up and down and said nothing. She just nodded. Fiona started coming every week, always with Jason, always with some comment about the house. This kitchen is very old, isn't it? She said, running her finger along the counter as if looking for dust. You should modernize it. Oh, the bathroom needs renovation. The ceiling could fall. My mother watched her with suspicion. One afternoon when Jason and Fiona left, my mother grabbed my arm. That woman has snake eyes, she told me. I don't like her. I laughed. I tried to downplay it. She is just Jason's girlfriend, Mom. Let's not pay attention to her. But my mother didn't laugh. William, listen to me. That woman didn't come here for love. She came for something else. I should have listened to her. But I didn't. One Wednesday afternoon, Jason arrived with a briefcase. He put it on the kitchen table and took out some papers. Dad, I need Grandma to sign this, he told me, showing me documents full of small print. I took the papers and tried to read, but I didn't understand anything. What is this? I asked. Jason ran his hand through his hair impatiently. It is to renew the house insurance. Routine. I just need her signature. I called my mother. She came slowly, dragging her feet. What is it, son? She asked me. Jason handed her a pen. Grandma, just sign here. It is for the insurance. So you are protected. My mother looked at the papers, then she looked at me. Is it important? She asked. I nodded, because I trusted my son. And that was my error. My mother signed. She scribbled her name on the bottom line with a trembling hand. Jason folded the papers quickly and put them in the briefcase. Perfect. Thanks, Grandma. He left without drinking coffee, without staying to talk. My mother remained seated, looking at the empty table. William, she told me after a while, I signed because you told me it was okay, but I don't know what I signed. I felt a knot in my stomach. I should have asked him to let me read calmly. I should have called a lawyer, but I didn't, because he was my son, and sons don't cheat their parents, or so I believed. A week later, Lucy didn't come. Lucy was the nurse who took care of my mother 3 times a week. She bathed her, gave her medications, helped her dress. My mother loved her. Lucy treats me like a person, not like an old woman, she said. But that Monday, Lucy didn't show up. I called her cell phone. "Mr. William," she told me with a broken voice as if she had been crying, "your son told me you didn't need me anymore. He paid me and asked me not to come back." I felt my blood freeze. "Jason told you that?" "Yes, sir. He said he was going to take charge. I am very sorry. Your mom is a very lovely lady." And she hung up. I stayed with the phone in my hand, feeling the rage rising up my throat. That night when Jason came, I confronted him. "Why did you fire Lucy?" I asked him. He was putting some things in the fridge. He didn't even turn around. "Because we don't need her anymore, Dad. I can take care of Grandma." I got closer. "You don't live here, Jason. How are you going to take care of her?" He closed the fridge with a slam and looked at me. That cold look that reminded me of the boy who sold the dog without permission. "Dad, we are spending money unnecessarily. Lucy charged a lot. I can come more often, or we can find another solution." "Another solution?" Those words remained floating in the air, but I didn't ask what they meant. I was afraid of the answer. Gabe started coming too. But he didn't come to visit me. He came to talk to Jason. The two of them locked themselves in the garden, talking in low voices. I watched them from the kitchen window. Jason pointed at the house. Gabe nodded. One afternoon I went out to the garden. "What are you talking about?" I asked them. They both turned around quickly, as if I had surprised them doing something bad. "Nothing, Dad," said Gabe, avoiding looking me in the eyes. "Just work things." But Jason looked straight at me. "We are seeing how to help you, Dad. This house is very big for you and Grandma. Maybe you should think about something smaller." I felt like I was missing air. "You want me to sell the house?" Jason shook his head, but his smile said otherwise. My mother started to change. She became quieter, more withdrawn. She didn't talk to me like before. One night, while we were having dinner, she looked at me with sad eyes. "William," she told me, "your son treats me as if I were stupid." I put down the fork. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "He talks to me as if I didn't understand anything. And, Fiona, that woman asks me weird questions." "What kind of questions? About papers? About properties? About what I have saved?" I felt a chill. "And what did you tell her?" My mother stared at me. "Nothing, because it is none of her business." But I saw the fear in her eyes. And I did nothing. I did nothing because I didn't want to believe that my son was capable of that. Grace called one Saturday. "Dad, how are you?" she asked me. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to tell her that Jason had fired Lucy, that he was bringing papers to sign, that something was wrong. But I didn't. "We are fine, honey," I told her. "Don't worry. Why did I lie?" Because I didn't want to worry her. Because I thought I could handle the situation. Because I still had hope that everything was a misunderstanding. "And Grandma?" asked Grace. I looked at my mother, sitting in her chair, with her eyes lost in the television. "She is fine," I lied. "She sends her love." When I hung up, my mother looked at me. "You didn't tell her anything." I shook my head. "I don't want to worry her." My mother sighed. "You should, because I feel that something bad is going to happen." Fiona and Jason came one day with a caregiver, a big man with a thick beard and small eyes. "Dad, this is Gordon," Jason said. "He is going to come help you with Grandma in case you need something." I looked at that man. Gordon didn't shake my hand. He just nodded. "We don't need anyone," I told Jason. But he ignored me. "It is just for safety, Dad. It costs nothing." Gordon stayed all afternoon, sitting in the living room, without speaking, just watching. My mother was uncomfortable. "William, I don't like that man," she whispered to me. "Neither do I, Mom." But when I asked Jason to take him away, he got angry. "Dad, I am trying to help you. But it seems you don't want help." And he left, leaving Gordon sitting in my living room like a guard dog. That night, after Gordon finally left, my mother called me to her room. She was sitting on the bed with the rosary in her hands. "William, I need to tell you something," she told me. Her voice was trembling. "Your son is scaring me." I sat next to her. "What happened?" She took a deep breath. "He asked me about Uncle Steve's properties, about the inheritance, about where I keep the papers." I felt my stomach turn. "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing." I told him I didn't remember. "But I do remember, William. I remember everything." She grabbed my hand tightly. "Promise me you won't let him take anything." I nodded, but inside I felt I had already lost control. My son wasn't helping. He was hunting, and I had been so blind that I didn't see it until it was already too late. I decided to make a lunch, like Eve used to do. Every Sunday she gathered the family, food, laughter, silly arguments about football or politics. I thought maybe if we went back to those traditions things would improve. I called everyone. Grace couldn't come. She was working. Johnny was still abroad. But Jason and Gabe said yes. Invite Father Anthony, my mother suggested. Anthony was the parish priest of the neighborhood church. He had known the family since my children were little. He was a good, wise man. I thought his presence would bring peace. So I called him. With pleasure, William, he told me. I spent all Saturday morning cooking. I made stew like Eve used to make, but it didn't come out the same. On Sunday, everyone arrived at noon. Jason came with Fiona. Gabe with his wife, Elena. Father Anthony arrived on time, with a bottle of wine and that kind smile he always had. William, how good to see you, he told me, hugging me. The house smelled of food. I set the big dining table, the one we only used on special occasions. My mother was sitting at the head, dressed up in her blue dress. She had combed her hair. She had put on perfume. How beautiful you look, Mom, I told her. She smiled. But it was a sad smile, as if she knew something bad was going to happen. We all sat down. Jason to my right, Gabe opposite, Fiona next to Jason, Father Anthony next to my mother, and we started eating. At first everything was fine. We talked about the weather, football, the news. Father Anthony told a story about the parish that made us laugh. My mother ate slowly, listening in silence. But then Jason left the fork on the plate. That metallic sound cut the conversation. We all looked at him. We need to talk about something, he said, staring at me. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. About what? I asked. Jason looked at Gabe. Gabe nodded, and then Jason dropped the bomb. Dad, we are worried about you. I frowned. Worried? Gabe leaned forward. Yes, Dad, you are getting older. Taking care of Grandma is a lot for you. I felt my face burning. I take care of your grandmother perfectly, I said, trying to stay calm. But Jason shook his head. Dad, it is not a reproach, it is a reality. You are 74 years old. Mom needs professional care. Fiona intervened, putting her hand over Jason's. Mr. William, we say it with love. We want the best for Grandma. I looked at Father Anthony. He was uncomfortable moving the wine in his glass without knowing where to look. My mother raised her voice. I don't need professional care. I am perfectly fine with my son. But Jason interrupted her. Grandma, you know we adore you. But you need 24-hour attention. Dad can't give it to you. And then I felt something break inside me. Who told you I can't? I asked, raising my voice. Jason sighed as if he felt sorry for having to explain something obvious to me. Dad, you fired Lucy. Grandma is without medical supervision. What happens if something happens to her and you are sleeping? What if she falls? Fiona nodded. It is true, Dad. You have to think about her. I looked at Gabe, my son, the one who had always been quieter, more obedient, and now he was on Jason's side. Grace agrees with us, said Gabe. We talked to her yesterday, and she is also worried. I felt my blood boil. Grace didn't tell me anything. Jason smiled. Because she didn't want to hurt you. But we all think the same. At that moment, the cell phone I had on the table rang. It was Grace, calling by video call. I answered. Her face appeared on the screen. Dad, what is happening? She asked. She seemed confused. Did Jason talk to you yesterday? I asked her. She frowned. No, Dad. I haven't spoken to Jason in 2 weeks. Why? I looked at Jason. He had lied. Again. But before I could say anything, the connection started to fail. Grace's image pixelated. Dad, don't! I'm listening, said her voice, breaking up, and it cut off. The call dropped. I called again. Nothing. I left the phone on the table and looked at Jason. Why did you lie? He shrugged. I didn't lie. Maybe I got confused, but his smile told me he knew exactly what he was doing. Father Anthony cleared his throat. Well, I think everyone here wants the best for Mrs. Gertrude, he said, trying to calm the waters. But I didn't want calm anymore. I wanted answers. What professional care are you talking about? I asked. Jason exchanged a look with Gabe. There is a very good residence on the outskirts, said Jason. With nurses, gardens, activities. Grandma would be happy. I got up from the table. The chair fell backward with a sharp thud. You want to put your grandmother in a nursing home? Jason also stood up. It is not an asylum, Dad. It is a residence. High quality. Fiona nodded. I know it. It is beautiful. My mother grabbed my arm. William, I'm not going anywhere. But her voice was trembling. She was afraid. No one is going to take my mother, I said, looking Jason in the eyes. He took a step toward me. We were face to face. Father Anthony got up, trying to mediate. Please, let's calm down, he said. But Jason didn't calm down. Dad, you aren't thinking clearly. We are all worried. Even Father Anthony can see it. Anthony raised his hands. I didn't say that, Jason. But Jason ignored him. If you don't want a residence, then let me bring a permanent caregiver. Gordon can stay here. I shook my head. I don't want that man in my house. Gabe intervened. Dad, you are being stubborn. We just want to help. And in that moment I knew this wasn't help. It was a plan. I left the dining room. I walked to the garden. I needed air. I needed to think. I heard someone following me. It was Father Anthony. William, he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I shook my head. No, Father, I am not okay. My son is trying to take my mother from me. Anthony sighed. Maybe he really believes he is helping. I looked at him. You too? The father looked down. I just say that. Well, maybe you should consider. He didn't finish the sentence. Because he saw something in my eyes. Something that made him shut up. I went back to the dining room. Jason, Gabe, Fiona, and Elena were talking in low voices. When I entered, they shut up. And then I heard it. A laugh. Fiona's laugh. And in that moment I knew something was wrong. I want you all to leave, I said. My voice came out calm. Too calm. Jason blinked. What? Leave. Now. Gabe stood up. Dad, don't be like that. We are just... Get out! I screamed. Father Anthony grabbed his jacket. I think it is better if I go, he said, uncomfortable. Gabe and his wife left without saying anything, but Jason stayed. He looked at me with that expression I knew so well, that mixture of contempt and pity. Dad, you are behaving like a child, he told me. Fiona touched his arm. Let's go, love. You will talk when he is calmer. And they left. The door closed, and I was left there standing in the middle of the dining room, with the cold food on the table and my mother crying silently in her chair. I felt invisible, as if I no longer mattered. That night my mother didn't want dinner. She went to her room early. I cleaned the table. I put away the food. I washed the dishes. And while I did all that, I thought about how I had reached this point, about how my own son had humiliated me in my own house, in front of Father Anthony, in front of my mother. When I finished cleaning, I went to my mother's room. I knocked on the door. Mom? Silence. I opened slowly. She was sitting on the bed with the rosary in her hands, looking at the window. William, she told me without looking at me. Your son has a plan, and we are in the middle. I sat next to her. I know, Mom. She grabbed my hand. Don't let him take me. I squeezed her hand. I won't allow it, I swear. But inside I was afraid. Because for the first time in my life I didn't know if I could keep that promise. If you are listening to my story, leave me a comment telling me where you are watching us from. Knowing someone is there gives me strength to keep telling. The days after that lunch were strange. My mother didn't talk to me like before. Before, when I entered her room in the mornings, she smiled at me. Good morning, son, she said, and asked me to tell her what we were going to do that day. But now when I entered, she barely looked up. She stayed there, sitting in her chair, looking at the window as if I didn't exist. Mom? I told her. Are you okay? She nodded without looking at me. Yes, I am fine. But her voice was flat, empty, as if something had been taken from inside her. I tried to talk, asked her if she wanted to go out to the garden, if she wanted me to prepare her favorite tea, but she just said, As you wish, William, and went back to looking out the window. Jason came every day. Before he stopped by 2 or 3 times a week. Now it was every day. He arrived in the morning, locked himself in the room with my mother. They spoke in low voices. I tried to listen from the hallway, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. When Jason came out, he always had that smile. Grandma is fine, Dad, he told me. She is just a little tired. But when I entered afterwards, My mother looked at me with scared eyes. One day I asked her, "What does Jason tell you when he is alone with you?" She looked down. "Nothing, son. He just asks me how I am." But I knew she was lying to me. I could see it in the way her hands were trembling. One afternoon, Jason arrived with Fiona and Gordon. The three entered without ringing the doorbell. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. I heard their voices in the living room. I went out and saw them around my mother. Jason was kneeling in front of her, speaking softly. "Grandma, it is for your own good," he was telling her. "Dad can't take care of you as he should. You know it." My mother looked at the floor. Fiona stroked her shoulder. "We love you, Grandma. We just want the best for you." Gordon was standing next to the door, with his arms crossed like a bodyguard. I got closer. "What is going on here?" Jason stood up. "Dad, we were just talking to Grandma." But my mother had tears in her eyes. "Leave her alone," I told them. My voice came out harder than I expected. Fiona raised her hands. "Mr. William, we are just out," I interrupted her. "The three of you now." Jason looked at me with that expression of contempt that hurt me so much. "Dad, you are getting paranoid." But they left, all three of them. When the door closed, I knelt in front of my mother. "What did they tell you?" I asked her. She shook her head. "Nothing, William. Nothing important." But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. I hugged her. I felt how her small and fragile body trembled against mine. "Mom, you can tell me anything," I whispered to her. But she just cried in silence, and I knew something terrible was happening. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed in the living room, sitting on the sofa with all the lights off. It was almost 3 in the morning when I heard a noise. It came from my mother's room. I got up slowly and walked down the hallway. Her door was ajar. I pushed it gently. My mother was sitting on the bed, crying. "Mom?" I whispered. She looked up. Her eyes were red, swollen. "William," she told me with a broken voice. "I can't sleep." I sat next to her. "Why are you crying?" She looked at me for a long time, as if deciding if she could trust me. Finally she spoke. "Your son told me something." I felt my heart racing. "What did he tell you?" My mother lowered her voice, as if she were afraid someone would hear us. "He told me that you want to put me in a nursing home." I felt like I was missing air. "What?" She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "He said you can't handle me anymore, that I am being a burden, that it would be better for everyone if I went to a place where professionals took care of me." I felt the rage rising up my throat. "Mom, that is not true. I never said that. I never thought that." She looked at me with eyes full of doubt. "But Jason said that you didn't want to tell me so as not to hurt me. That is why he was organizing everything for you." And in that moment I understood. Jason wasn't just taking my mother from me, he was turning me into the enemy. "Mom, look at me," I told her, taking her face between my hands. "Jason is lying to you. I will never, never leave you. You stay here, with me, until God decides." She stared at me. I saw how she struggled to believe me. "But he showed me papers," she whispered. "Papers from a residence. He said everything was already arranged." I felt my hands shaking. "What papers?" She got up slowly, walked to her closet, and took out an envelope. She handed it to me with trembling hands. I opened it. Inside was a brochure for a nursing home and a letter. The letter said, "Dear Mrs. Benavides, your family has requested a spot for you. We hope to receive you next month." The letter was signed by the director and was dated 2 weeks ago. I felt the room spinning. "Mom, I didn't sign this. I didn't ask for any of this." She sat on the bed, defeated. "Jason said you had done it for my own good, that it was the best." I squeezed the paper so hard it crumpled. "He is manipulating you, and he is using me to do it." My mother started crying again. "I don't know what to believe, William. I don't know who to believe." And those words destroyed me, because my own mother doubted me. After 74 years of life, after everything we had gone through together, my son had managed to put a wall between us. I got up and walked to the door. I needed to get out of there before she saw me cry. I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and let everything out. I cried like I hadn't cried since Eve's death. I cried for my mother, for her fear, for her confusion. I cried for myself for feeling so helpless. I cried because my own son had turned me into the villain of this story. And the worst of all was that I didn't know how to fix it. How do you prove to someone that the liars are the others? How do you recover trust when someone has planted so much doubt? I stayed there, sitting in the dark, with my hands on my face, feeling like everything was slipping through my hands. And for the first time in my life, I thought about giving up. I thought about letting Jason do whatever he wanted. Because maybe he was right. Maybe I couldn't handle it anymore. But then I remembered something. I remembered the day my mother was born. No, wait, I wasn't there. But my grandmother told me that story. She told me how my mother came into the world in the middle of a storm, in a house without electricity, with a midwife who almost didn't arrive on time. My grandmother said that when my mother was born, she cried so loud it was heard all over the street. That girl came into this world fighting, my grandmother told me. And that is how she is going to live her whole life, fighting. And my mother had fought. She had raised 4 children almost alone while my father worked from sun to sun. She had survived the death of her husband, her brothers, her friends. She had survived 92 years of life. And I was going to give up because my son was a liar. No, I couldn't. I got up. I washed my face with cold water. I went back to my mother's room. She was still sitting on the bed looking at the floor. I knelt in front of her. "Mom, listen to me well," I told her. "I don't know how to convince you that I am telling you the truth, but I swear to you by Eve's memory, by everything we have lived together, that I am never going to abandon you. Jason is lying. He is manipulating you, and I am going to prove it to you." She looked up. I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. How? I had no answer, but in that moment it didn't matter. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I will do it. I promise." She reached out her hand and touched my cheek. "William, I am afraid." I grabbed her hand. "Me too, Mom. Me too." And that was the longest night of my life, because I knew it wasn't just about taking care of her anymore. It was about saving her. That same night, after I went to my room, my mother stayed awake. I know, because at 4 in the morning I went down for water and heard her. She was in her room, talking to herself. I stayed in the hallway listening. "Eve," she said with a trembling voice. "Eve, if you are watching me from where you are, take care of William, because I feel that something bad is coming. Your son Jason has the eyes of someone who has already decided something terrible. And I don't know if I am going to be able to protect myself." There was a silence. Then she continued, "If something happens to me, Eve, I want you to know that William did everything right. He took care of me, he loved me, and if your other son hurts me, I don't want William to carry that guilt. Tell him I forgive him. Tell him I will always forgive him." I froze in the hallway, with tears falling uncontrollably. And I didn't go in because I knew if I went in she was going to stop talking, and she needed to say that. She needed to get it off her chest. If you are listening to this and something similar happened to you, you are not alone. And if you are still here, subscribe, because what is coming is going to hurt even more. 2 days after that night, I woke up and went straight to my mother's room, like every day. But this time, when I opened the door, I already knew. I already felt it. The bed was made, the chair empty, and although I had seen it before, although I already knew what it meant, I felt the same blow in my chest. But this time it was different. This time I didn't freeze. I ran to the kitchen. Jason was there, drinking coffee like nothing happened. "Where is she?" I asked him. He looked at me with that rehearsed calm. "I told you, Dad," with Aunt Rose. But I didn't believe him anymore. I didn't believe anything that came out of his mouth. I grabbed my jacket. "I am going to the police," I told him. Jason stood up quickly. "Dad, don't do that. You are going to look like a crazy person." I didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because a part of me, however small, still doubted. He was my son, my firstborn, the one I had carried in my arms when he was a baby, the one I had taught to ride a bike. How was I going to report him? I decided to investigate first. I needed proof. I went to Gabe's house. He lived in a neighborhood far away, in a small house with bars on the windows. I rang the bell. His wife Elena opened. "Mr. William," she said, surprised. "Gabe isn't here." I pushed the door gently. "I need to talk to him. It is urgent." Elena hesitated, but let me pass. Gabe was in the living room watching television. When he saw me, his face turned pale. "Dad," he said, standing up, "what are you doing here? Where is your grandmother?" I asked him directly. Gabe looked at Elena. She left the room, uncomfortable. Gabe ran his hand through his hair. Dad, I don't know what you were talking about. I got closer. Gabe, you are my son, and I know when you are lying to me. Where does Jason have her? Gabe took a step back. Dad, I didn't. His voice broke. I just did what he asked. He said it was for everyone's good. I felt my blood boil. What did you do? Gabe sat on the sofa with his head in his hands. I helped carry her. But he told me it was only going to be a few days, that he just needed her to sign some papers, that he would bring her back later. I sat next to him. Where did they take her? Gabe looked at me with eyes full of tears. I don't know, Dad. I swear. Jason didn't tell me. He just asked me to help him get her out of the house. And I did it. I grabbed his arm. Gabe, your grandmother is in danger. I need you to tell me everything you know. He took a deep breath. I know Fiona and Gordon are with him, and I know they have a house somewhere. I heard Jason talking on the phone. He said something about the house on the outskirts, but I don't know where it is. I stood up. Anything else? Gabe shook his head. Sorry, Dad. Sorry for everything. I looked at him. My son, my Gabe, the one who had always been weak, the one who always followed others. You are going to have to live with this, I told him. And I left his house without looking back. I went back home. I went straight to the study. There we had the recordings from the security cameras. Cameras that Jason had installed a year ago. For security, he had said. I turned on the computer. I looked for the day my mother disappeared. I found the folder, but when I tried to open it, there was nothing. The files had been deleted. All of them. I felt my hands shaking. Jason had deleted the evidence. But then I remembered something. Mr. Theodore, my neighbor across the street, had cameras that pointed toward the street. I ran out of the house. I crossed the street. I knocked on Theodore's house. He opened, surprised to see me so agitated. William, what happened? Theodore, I need to see your cameras, I told him, almost out of breath. My mother disappeared. Mr. Theodore let me in. We went to his study. He turned on his computer. What day was it? He asked me. I gave him the date. He searched his files. Here it is, he said, opening the video. We sat in front of the screen. I saw my house. The empty street. It was 11 at night, according to the clock in the corner of the video, and then it appeared. A black SUV. It stopped in front of my house. The passenger door opened, and Jason got out. Then Fiona, and then Gordon. The three walked toward my door. They disappeared from the frame. We waited. 5 minutes later they appeared again. Jason and Gordon were carrying something. A wheelchair, with my mother sitting in it. Her head was down. She wasn't moving. They loaded her into the SUV, and they left. I felt like I was missing air. Mister? Theodore put a hand on my shoulder. William, what is happening? I couldn't speak. I just looked at the screen. My son. My own son. He had taken my mother out of her house in the middle of the night. Like a thief. Like a criminal. I need a copy of this, I told Theodore with a trembling voice. He nodded. He saved the video on a USB drive and handed it to me. Go to the police, he told me. Now. I grabbed the drive with shaking hands. I left his house. But I didn't go straight to the police. First I went to my house. I needed to think. I needed to process what I had just seen. I sat in the living room with the USB drive in my hand, and then I fell to my knees, and I screamed. I screamed until my throat hurt. I called Grace. She answered on the second ring. Dad, what happened? I didn't even know where to start. Your brother took your grandmother, I told her. I have a video. I heard Grace gasp loudly. What? I told her everything. The lunch, the manipulation, the papers, the lies, and finally the video. When I finished, Grace was crying. I am going there, she said. I am leaving right now. I hung up. I called Johnny. It was early morning in Italy, but he answered. I told him the same thing. Dad, did you call the police? Not yet. Do it now. I am taking the first flight. I hung up, and then, with my hands still shaking, I dialed the police number. I need to report a kidnapping, I said when they answered. It is my mother. My son took her. I went to the precinct. A female detective attended me. Detective Miller, her badge read. She was a woman of about 50, with short hair and a serious look. I told her everything. I showed her the video. She watched it in silence. When she finished, she looked at me. Mr. William, this is serious. We are going to open an investigation immediately. We filled out papers. I answered question. I gave description. Phone numbers. Address. The detective assured me they would do everything possible to find her. But I need you to give me 48 hours, she told me. To track, to investigate. I nodded. But 48 hours seemed like an eternity. I left the precinct feeling a void in my chest. What was happening to my mother right now? Was she scared? Was she okay? Did she know I was searching for her? I went back home. Grace arrived that night. She got out of the car running and hugged me. "Dad," she said, crying against my shoulder. "How could you hide all this from me?" I had no answers. I just hugged her. We sat in the living room. I showed her the video again. I saw her face transform, from sadness to anger. "I am going to kill him," she said. "I am going to kill Jason." I shook my head. The police are handling it. But inside, I wanted to kill him too. That night, Grace and I stayed awake. We talked about everything, about how we didn't see the signs, about how Jason changed over the years, about how Eve always defended him and that blinded us, and about how now we had to save everything. The next day, Detective Miller called me. "Mr. William, we tracked Fiona's cell phone. We have a location, a house on the outskirts. We are going there with a warrant. I will keep you informed." I hung up. Grace looked at me. What did she say? They found her. I think they found her. We got in the car. We followed the police. We arrived at an abandoned house on the edge of the city. But when the police entered, the house was empty. Empty. There was no one. Not my mother. Not Jason. Not Fiona. Not Gordon. Only old furniture and dust. The detective came out, frustrated. They tricked us. They left false leads. I sat on the curb. Grace sat next to me. And in that moment I thought I had lost her forever. That my mother was going to die in some dark place, and I was never going to know where, until my phone rang. It was an unknown number, I answered. And I heard her voice. "William, it is me, your mother." "Mom?" My voice came out like a muffled scream. On the other end of the line I heard her breath hitching. "William, my son?" Her voice was barely a whisper, weak, scared. But it was her. It was my mother. I got up from the curb where I was sitting. Grace looked at me with wide eyes. "Is it her?" she asked. I nodded with the phone pressed to my ear. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay?" I heard background noise, like wind, or maybe traffic. "No, I don't know where I am," she said. Her voice was trembling. I managed to get out. A lady helped me. She lent me her phone. I felt my heart was going to explode. "What lady? Where is she?" "Her name is Belinda. She says she lives near where they had me." Detective Miller was by my side. I signaled her. She came running. "It is my mother," I told her. Miller grabbed her radio. "I need to trace this call. Now." I went back to the phone. "Mom, stay where you are. I am coming to get you. Can you tell me what you see around you?" I heard my mother breathing with difficulty. There is a store, a grocery store. It is called Peter's Corner Store." Miller was already typing on her cell phone. "I found it," she said. "It is 20 minutes from here." I grabbed Grace's arm. We found her. My daughter started crying, but they were tears of relief, of hope. Miller called for backup. In less than 2 minutes, there were 3 patrol cars ready. "Let's go," she told me. We got in the car. During the ride, I didn't let go of the phone. I kept talking to my mother. "Mom, I am coming. Hang on. Don't hang up." She was coughing on the other side. "William, I am cold." I felt my soul breaking. "I am coming, Mom. I am coming." Grace was driving. She was going fast. Too fast. But I didn't tell her to slow down. I wanted to arrive, too. The patrol cars were ahead of us with sirens on. The cell phone crackled. "Mom?" Silence. "Mom?" More silence. And then I heard another voice. A woman's voice, older. "Hello? Is this the lady's son?" "Yes," I said, almost shouting. "I am William. I am Belinda. Your mom is very weak. I took her to my house. She is lying down. What is your address? Belinda gave me the address. It was 2 blocks from the store. We arrived in 15 minutes. Belinda's house was small, painted yellow, with a garden full of flowers. I got out of the car before Grace stopped completely. I ran to the door. I knocked. Belinda opened. She was a woman of about 60, with gray hair tied in a bun. Come in, she told me. I entered, and there she was, my mother, lying on an old sofa covered with a knitted blanket. Her eyes were closed. Her face was pale, paler than I had ever seen it. I knelt beside her. Mom? I whispered. She opened her eyes slowly. When she saw me, a tear rolled down her cheek. William, you came? I grabbed her hand. It was freezing. Of course I came, Mom. I was always going to come. Detective Miller entered with a paramedic. We need to check her, she said. The paramedic knelt next to me. He checked her vital signs. She is dehydrated and has mild hypothermia. She needs to go to the hospital. I nodded, but before they took her away, my mother grabbed my arm. William, the house. You need to find the house. I frowned. What house, Mom? Where they had me. It has a basement. A secret basement. That is where they locked me up. Miller got closer. Ma'am, can you tell us where that house is? My mother closed her eyes, trying to remember. I don't know the address, but it is close. Belinda found me 2 blocks away. I ran. I ran as much as I could until I found her house. Belinda intervened. There is an abandoned house around here. A big house with boarded-up windows. It has been empty for years. Miller called her officers. Find that house. Now. They left. The paramedic loaded my mother onto a stretcher. They put her in the ambulance. Grace got in with her. I am going with Grandma, she told me. You go with the police. I hesitated, but my mother looked at me from the stretcher. Go, my son. Find your son and bring him to justice. Those words gave me strength. I nodded. The ambulance left, and I got into Miller's car. We are going to find them, she told me. I promise. And I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was going to end well, but something in my chest told me the worst was yet to come. We found the house in 10 minutes. Belinda was right. It was a big house, old, with boarded-up windows and a garden full of weeds. It looked like something out of a horror movie. The patrol cars surrounded the place. Miller got out of the car with her gun drawn. Stay here, she told me. But I got out too. It is my family, I told her. I am going with you. She hesitated, but she nodded. We walked toward the front door. One of the officers kicked it. It opened with a crack. We entered. The house smelled of dampness and neglect. There was dust-covered furniture, cobwebs in the corners. Police! Shouted Miller. Come out with your hands up! Silence. We walked slowly, checking every room. Nothing. The house seemed empty. And then one of the officers shouted from the back. Detective, there is a door here. We ran to where the officer was. There was a wooden door in the floor, a trap door, hidden under an old and threadbare rug. Miller opened it carefully. There was a staircase leading down to absolute darkness. Turn on your flashlight, she told one of the officers. The light illuminated the stairs. They were made of rotten wood. They creaked with every step. We went down slowly. The air was dense, freezing, hard to breathe. It smelled of mold, of urine, of fear, of confinement. That smell that places where people suffer have. The walls were dripping water. There were dark stains on the floor that I didn't want to identify. We reached the bottom. It was a small, narrow basement, with bare concrete walls and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling that flickered. And there, in a corner, thrown on a broken plastic chair, was Gordon, tied with ropes, with a dirty face, blindfolded, shaking. I recognized him immediately. He was blindfolded and his hands were tied. What? Miller approached and took off the blindfold. Gordon blinked, disoriented. When he saw the guns, he started to shake. Don't shoot, he said. I was just doing what I was paid to do. Miller untied him. Where are the others? Gordon pointed toward a door at the back of the basement. They hid there when they heard the sirens. Miller and the officers walked toward the door. They kicked it open, and there they were, Jason, Fiona, and Gabe, the three of them cornered in an even smaller room. Jason had a cell phone in his hand. He was trying to make a call. When he saw us, he dropped the phone. Fiona was sitting on the floor, crying. And Gabe had his face in his hands. "Hands up!" shouted Miller. "Everyone!" The three obeyed. The officers handcuffed them, and I stood there, looking at my son. My son! Handcuffed like a criminal, because that was what he was, a criminal. We all went back up to the house. Outside, there were already more patrol cars. The neighbors had gathered, watching from their windows and gardens. They put Jason, Fiona, Gabe, and Gordon in separate patrol cars. I stayed in the street, watching as they took my children away. Gabe was crying. He looked at me through the window of the patrol car. "Sorry, Dad," he shouted, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Jason, on the other hand, showed no emotion. He just looked straight ahead with his jaw clenched. Miller approached me. "I am sorry, William," she told me. "I know this isn't easy." I nodded. "Can I go see my mother?" "Of course. I will take care of the rest." I got into the car, but before starting I looked at the house one last time, and I thought about everything my mother had lived through there. About the fear, about the loneliness, and I swore I was going to make them pay. On the way to the hospital, my phone rang. It was Johnny. "Dad," Grace told me. "Is it true? Did you find Grandma?" "Yes, son, we found her." I heard Johnny let out a breath. "Thank God. I am at the airport. I arrive in 8 hours. We will wait for you here." I hung up, and for the first time in days I felt something resembling peace. But it was a bitter peace, because yes, I had found my mother, but I had lost my children, one as a criminal, the other as an accomplice. And although Grace and Johnny were with me, the family that Eve had built with so much love had broken, and I didn't know if it could ever be put back together. I arrived at the hospital, parked, and before getting out I allowed myself to cry. Cry for everything, for my mother, for my children, for Eve, and for me, who had believed I could save everyone, until I heard her voice. I ran into the hospital. I asked at reception. "Gertrude Benavides," I said, almost out of breath. The receptionist typed on her computer. "Room 212, second floor." I went up the stairs. I didn't want to wait for the elevator. I arrived at the room. The door was ajar. I pushed slowly, and there was my mother, lying in the hospital bed, with an IV in her arm and a blanket up to her neck. Grace was sitting next to her, holding her hand. When she saw me, Grace smiled. "She is stable," she told me. "The doctor said she is going to be fine." I approached the bed. My mother had her eyes closed, but she was breathing. She was breathing calmly. I sat on the other side and grabbed her other hand, and there we stayed, the three of us, in silence. My mother opened her eyes half an hour later. She looked at me, then she looked at Grace, and she smiled, a weak smile, but real. "My children," she said with a hoarse voice. "You were there. I knew you would come." I felt a knot forming in my throat. "Mom, sorry. Sorry for not taking better care of you." She shook her head. "You took care of me, William. You always did." Grace stroked her hair. "Grandma, what did they do to you?" My mother closed her eyes. I saw her face darken. "They locked me in a basement, without light, without hot water. Jason came every day. He brought me food, but only if I signed papers." I squeezed her hand. "Did you sign anything?" She shook her head. "No. I pretended I was confused, that I didn't understand, and he got angry, but I didn't sign anything." She took a deep breath, as if just remembering it hurt. "There were moments, William, when I thought I was going to go crazy. Down there in that cold basement, without knowing if it was day or night, I started talking to myself. I talked to your father. I told him, 'Love, do you see me from where you are? Our grandson has me locked up like an animal, but I am not going to break. I am not going to give him that satisfaction.' And then I talked to you, William. I told you, son, I know you are searching for me. I know you haven't forgotten me. Hang on, Mom. Hang on a little more." I held on to those thoughts as if they were a rope, because if I stopped believing, if I stopped resisting, then he won, and I wasn't going to let him win. 92 years of life, William. 92 years fighting, and I wasn't going to give up there. Grace stood up. "I am going to find the doctor. I need to know when she can go home." She left the room. I was left alone with my mother. She stared at me. William, there is something you need to know. I leaned toward her. What, Mom? She took a deep breath. I had a box, a wooden box that I kept for years. Your son looked for it. He ransacked all my things, but he never found it. I frowned. What was in that box? My mother smiled, a sad smile. The truth. A letter from my mother. Your grandmother. She left it written that the inheritance would only be valid if I was in full freedom. If someone forced me to sign, everything would be annulled. I felt a chill. Did Jason know that? No. And that is why I am alive, because if I had signed, maybe he wouldn't have let me out. The doctor entered shortly after. He was a young man with round glasses and an impeccable white coat. Mr. William, he said, looking at me with that seriousness doctors have when they know you are on the edge of collapse. Your mother is out of danger, but she needs to stay admitted for 2 or 3 days for observation. What she lived through not only affected her body, but also her mind. She is going to need time. I nodded without being able to speak. Thanks, doctor. He put a hand on my shoulder. You should rest too. You look like you haven't slept in days. And he left. Grace came back with coffee. We sat next to the bed. And we waited. The next day, Detective Miller came to the hospital. She brought papers. Mrs. Gertrude, she told her, approaching the bed, I need you to tell me everything that happened, from the beginning. And my mother told her. She told how Jason took her out of the house in the middle of the night, how they took her to that house, how they locked her in the basement, how Fiona threatened her, how Gordon watched her, and how Gabe, my Gabe, was there the first day, helping. Miller took notes. When my mother finished, Miller closed her notebook. This is enough to charge them with illegal deprivation of liberty, extortion, and threats. 3 days later, there was a hearing. I didn't want to go, but Miller told me it was important. Your presence can help, she told me. So I went. Grace came with me. Johnny had arrived from Italy. The 3 of us entered the courtroom. It was a cold place, with white walls and wooden benches. We sat in the first row, and then they brought them. Jason entered first, handcuffed, with a wrinkled suit and an unshaven beard. Then Fiona, then Gabe, and finally Gordon. The 4 sat in the defendant's box. Jason looked at me. I held his gaze. I wasn't going to be the one to look down first. The judge entered. All rise, said the bailiff. We stood up, and the hearing began. I heard the accusations. Illegal deprivation of liberty, extortion, threats, attempted fraud. Every word was a blow. But I didn't look away from Jason. I wanted him to know I was there, that I was going to watch him fall. The prosecutor asked if anyone wanted to testify. I stood up. I do, I said. The judge nodded. I went up to the stand. I swore to tell the truth. And then I spoke. I spoke about my mother, about her fragility, about how Jason had manipulated everything, about how he had lied, about how he had broken our family. When I finished, I went back to my seat. My hands were shaking. Grace grabbed my arm. You did well, Dad, she whispered to me. But I didn't feel well. I felt empty. After the hearing, I went out to the hallway. I needed air. And then I saw him, Gabe. He was sitting on a bench with his hands handcuffed in front of him. He was crying. I approached. I sat next to him. He looked up. Dad, he said with a broken voice, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I looked at him. My son. The one who had always been weak. The one who always followed others. Why, Gabe? I don't know, Dad. Jason convinced me. He said it was for everyone's good, that Grandma was going to be better off, that you couldn't take care of her, and I believed him. I felt rage, but also pity. Gabe, what you did has consequences, he nodded. I know, and I am going to pay for it, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt Grandma. Never. I stood up. You are going to have to tell her that, not me. I went back to the room. They were going to bring Jason for questioning. They brought him. They sat him in a chair in front of the judge. The prosecutor started asking questions, but Jason didn't answer. He just looked straight ahead with his jaw clenched. Mr. Jason, said the prosecutor, do you have anything to say? Jason didn't answer. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Jason, I order you to answer. And then Jason spoke. I have nothing to say, he said with a cold voice. Except that this is a misunderstanding. The prosecutor frowned. A misunderstanding? Jason nodded. I was just taking care of my grandmother. My father is old. He can't do it. I felt my blood boil. I stood up. Liar! I shouted. The judge banged his gavel. Order! But I didn't shut up. You kidnapped her. You locked her up. And now you say you were taking care of her. Jason looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes. Contempt. I approached the bench. An officer tried to stop me, but Grace stopped him. Let him, she told him. I stood in front of Jason. We were face to face, separated only by a railing. Why? I asked him. My voice was trembling. Why did you do it? Jason looked at me without blinking, and then he said the words that destroyed me. Because she had what I needed, and you were never going to understand. I felt the world stop. Money? I asked. Was all this for money? Jason shrugged. Not just money. Also properties, stocks, things she kept and never used. I had debts. I needed that. I shook my head. She is your grandmother. And you are my father, Jason replied. So what? Blood means nothing when you have a ruined life. I stepped back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That man standing in front of me, handcuffed, with a hard face and a cold voice, was no longer my son. He was a stranger with my blood, but nothing else. Grace approached. Dad, let's go, she told me, but I couldn't move. I kept looking at Jason. Do you know what is the worst? I told him. That your mother defended you until the last day of her life. And you didn't even go to her funeral on time. Jason didn't answer, he just looked away. And in that moment I knew I had lost him forever. That the son I had raised, the one I had carried in my arms, had disappeared years ago. And this man, this criminal, was all that remained. The judge ordered pre-trial detention for the four of them. Jason and Gordon, without bail. Fiona and Gabe with high bail. We left the courthouse. Outside the sun was shining. Life went on as if nothing happened. But for me everything had changed. Johnny hugged me. Dad, I am sorry, he told me. I nodded. I had no words. We got in the car. We went back to the hospital. My mother was awake when we arrived. She smiled when she saw us. How was it? She asked. I sat next to her. Jason is going to pay for what he did. She nodded. Good. And then she grabbed my hand and whispered to me, I knew you would come, William. I always knew. And in that moment, with her hand in mine, I felt that all the pain, all the rage, all the fear were worth it, because I had saved her, and that was the only thing that mattered. A week later, the doctor said my mother could go home. But before signing the discharge, Detective Miller came to the hospital. She brought an evidence box. Mrs. Gertrude, she said, sitting next to the bed, we found this in the house where they had you. We believe it is yours. She opened the box. Inside were my mother's clothes, her rosary, her glasses, and something else. A small wooden box, antique, with hand carvings. My mother saw it, and her eyes lit up. My box, she whispered. I thought I had lost it. Miller handed it to her. My mother grabbed it with trembling hands. She opened it slowly, and inside, wrapped in an old handkerchief, was a letter, yellowed, with old handwriting. What is that, Mom? I asked her. She looked at me. Salvation. My mother took out the letter carefully. The paper crackled between her fingers. This letter was written by my mother, she said. Your grandmother. More than 50 years ago when she received the inheritance from Uncle Steve. I got closer. What does it say? My mother unfolded the letter and started reading aloud. Her voice was trembling, but it was firm. I, Mary Carmen Armstrong, declare that the inheritance received from my brother Steve will only be valid for my daughter Gertrude if she is in full freedom and in use of all her mental faculties. Any document signed under coercion, threat, or deceit will be considered null. This is my last will. Silence. Miller raised her eyebrows. Is that a legal document? My mother nodded. It is registered. In the public records. 53 years ago. I felt something break inside me, but it wasn't pain, it was relief. Mom, that means, she nodded, that everything Jason did was in vain. Even if I had signed, it would be worth nothing. The inheritance would have never reached him. Grace, who was by the window, approached. "Grandma, did Jason know this?" My mother shook her head. "No. I never told him. I never told anyone, except the family lawyer, Mr. Harrison. But he died years ago." Miller took notes. "This changes everything. With this document, we can add attempted fraud to the charges." My mother closed the box. "William," she told me, staring at me, "I knew Jason was going to try something. That is why I kept this box as if it were my life, because it was." 2 days later, there was another hearing. This time, the prosecutor presented the letter as evidence. The judge read it in silence. Then he looked at Jason. "Mr. Jason, did you know of the existence of this document?" Jason didn't answer. His lawyer, Mr. Sullivan, stood up. He was a fat man, with a mustache and an expensive suit. "Your Honor, my client had no knowledge of that document. Therefore, he cannot be accused of fraud." The prosecutor smiled. "He had no knowledge? Then why did he try to get Mrs. Gertrude to sign property transfer documents without the presence of a notary public?" Sullivan stuttered. That is." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Sullivan, did you advise your client in this process?" Sullivan turned pale. "I only. Answer yes or no." Silence. And then Sullivan lowered his head. "Yes." The judge ordered Sullivan's immediate arrest for complicity in attempted fraud and counseling to commit a crime. 2 officers approached Sullivan. He raised his hands. "Wait, I can explain." But no one listened to him. They took him away, handcuffed. Jason watched him go, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Because now he was alone, without a lawyer, without accomplices who could save him. The prosecutor continued. "Also, we have discovered something else." He opened a folder. "Mrs. Gertrude donated a significant part of her inheritance to charities 10 years ago. Here are the documents. Hospitals, orphanages, churches. In total, 80% of the inheritance was already distributed." I looked at my mother, surprised. She smiled. "I did it because I wanted to," she said. "Because money isn't taken to the grave." The prosecutor showed them to the judge, which means that Mr. Jason's entire plan was for an inheritance that practically no longer exists. Only a few minor properties and a modest savings account remain. Jason stood up suddenly. "That cannot be." His voice echoed in the room. "She has millions. I know it." The judge banged his gavel. "Order. Mr. Jason, sit down." But Jason didn't sit down. My grandmother lied to me. She tricked me. I stood up too. "No, you tricked yourself. You thought there was a treasure and you destroyed your family for nothing." Jason looked at me with pure hate. "You convinced her. You told her to donate everything so I wouldn't have anything." I shook my head. "I knew nothing about that, but I am glad because you deserve nothing." After the hearing, my mother asked to speak with me alone. We sat on a bench outside the courthouse. She grabbed my hand. "William, I need you to understand something," she told me. "When I was locked in that basement, I thought I was going to die." I squeezed her hand. "Mom, don't say that," she continued. "I spent 3 days there, 3 days in the dark. Jason came down once a day. He brought me a plate of cold food and a glass of water. He told me, 'Grandma, just sign, and all this ends.' But I didn't sign. Not because I knew about my mother's document, but because I knew that if I signed, he didn't need me anymore. And then, what was he going to do to me?" Her voice broke. I saw tears in her eyes. "I was so scared, William. So scared." I hugged her. I felt how her small and fragile body trembled against mine. "But do you know what kept me alive?" she told me. "Thinking about you. Thinking that you were searching for me, that you hadn't forgotten me. I felt my soul breaking. I would never forget you, Mom. Never." She pulled away and stared at me. In those days of darkness, I talked to myself. A lot. I recited things my mother taught me as a child. I prayed the rosary without having it in my hands, and I talked as if your father were sitting next to me on that cold cement floor. I told him, "Love, our grandson got lost in ambition, but our son didn't. Our son is going to find me, because he has your kindness, your heart, your decency. And when he finds me, he is going to know it was worth it." I also talked to your grandmother, to my mother. I told her, "Mom, thank you for writing that letter. Thank you for protecting me, even after death." Because that letter is the only thing that keeps me alive down here. I couldn't contain the tears. Mom. She wiped my tears with her wrinkled hand, with that tenderness that only mothers have. And I was right, son. You found me, and now everything is okay. But I knew everything wasn't okay, because I had lost 2 children in the process, and that was never going to be okay. That night, at home, my mother called me to her room. She was sitting on the bed with the wooden box on her lap. I want you to have this, she told me. I shook my head. Mom, that is yours, she insisted. William, I am 92 years old. I don't know how much time I have left. I want you to keep this, so that when I am not here, you know that I always protected you. I grabbed the box. I opened it. Inside, besides the letter, there were old photos. Photos of my father, of my grandparents, of us when we were children. This box has our whole history, my mother told me. Keep it safe. I closed the box and pressed it against my chest. I will, Mom, I promise. She smiled, and in that moment I felt that everything had been worth it because I had her with me, alive, safe. A week later, the judge passed the sentence. Jason, 8 years in prison. Fiona, 5 years. Gordon, 6 years. Gabe, 3 years, with the possibility of reduction for cooperation. When I read the sentence in the newspaper, I didn't feel joy, only emptiness. Grace hugged me. Dad, this is justice. I nodded, but justice didn't bring back my family. Justice didn't erase the pain. Johnny, who had extended his stay, put his hand on my shoulder. Dad, you did the right thing. I know, I said, but it doesn't feel good. My mother, who was sitting in her chair by the window, spoke. William, justice never feels good when it is against your own blood. But it was necessary, because there are worse things than losing a son, and one of them is losing your dignity. That night, before sleeping, I thought about everything that had happened, about how my life had changed in a matter of weeks, about how I had lost 2 sons but saved my mother, about how the family Eve had built had broken but had also been rebuilt in a different way. Grace now lived with me. Johnny visited more, and my mother was alive and strong. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time I slept peacefully, because I understood something. I understood that my mother had saved me even from confinement, with her cunning, with her strength, with that wooden box she kept all her life. She always knew. She was always one step ahead. And I, who thought I was taking care of her, discovered that it was she who was taking care of me. My mother returned home 2 weeks after the sentencing. When I helped her out of the car and through the front door, she stopped on the threshold. She closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. It smells like home, she said. I smiled. Grace had prepared everything. She had cleaned the house, changed the sheets, put fresh flowers in every room. The house smelled of lavender and freshly baked bread. My mother walked slowly to the living room. She sat in her chair, the same one where she had sat thousands of times before. This is where I belong, she said. Not in a basement, not in a hospital here. I knelt beside her. And here you will stay, Mom, forever. She caressed my face. I know, son, I know. The following days were of healing. Grace had officially moved back. She left her job in the other city and got one here. I want to be close to you guys, she told me. I already lost too much time away. Johnny came every weekend. He brought Italian food, wine, stories of his life abroad. The house, which had been so empty and silent after Eve's death, had life again. One Sunday, while we were all having lunch together, my mother raised her glass of water. I want to make a toast, she said. We all went silent. To family, the true one, the one that stays when everything collapses. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in months, I felt complete. Almost complete. 2 months after the sentencing, I received a letter. It came from the prison. The sender was Gabe. I opened it with trembling hands. Grace was with me. What does it say? She asked. I read aloud. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I need you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret it. I was weak. I let Jason convince me of something horrible, and now I am paying for it. But what hurts me the most is not being here. It is knowing that I let you down. You, Grandma, Mom. If I could turn back time, I would do everything differently. I love you, Dad, and I hope one day to be able to look you in the eyes again. Gabe. I folded the letter. I felt a knot in my throat. Grace looked at me. Are you going to go see him? I didn't know. I still didn't know. One afternoon, Father Anthony came to visit us. He brought a bottle of wine and a Bible. I come to pray with you, he said. We sat in the living room. My mother, Grace, Johnny, the father, and me. Anthony read a passage about forgiveness. About how forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but letting go of the weight. When he finished, he looked at my mother. Mrs. Gertrude, how do you feel? And you, William? I looked at my hands. I don't know, Father. I still don't know. He put his hand on my shoulder. Forgiveness takes time. Don't rush. When you are ready, it will come. But I wasn't sure if I would ever be ready to forgive Jason. Gabe, maybe, but Jason, no. One night, my mother asked me to sit in the garden. It was cold, but she insisted. We wrapped ourselves in blankets and sat on the old plastic chairs. William, she told me, looking at the stars, did I ever tell you how I met your father? I smiled. 1,000 times, Mom. She laughed. Well, I am going to tell you again. And she told me the story of how they met at a fair, how he invited her to dance, how they fell in love. I had heard it so many times, but that night was different, because after everything we had gone through, that story was no longer just a story. It was a reminder that true love exists and it is worth fighting for. When she finished her story, my mother looked at me. I took care of you as a child, she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I changed your diapers, fed you, taught you to walk, and now you took care of me in my old age. You saved me, you protected me. I felt my eyes filling with tears. Mom, She raised her hand. Let me finish. The rest, William. Time will put it in its place. Jason will pay his debt. Gabe will find his way. But you and I, we already won, because we are still together. I grabbed her hand. I am always going to be with you, Mom. She squeezed my hand. I know, my son. I know. And we stayed there, sitting under the stars in silence. A silence that was no longer heavy. It was peace. With time, I started visiting Gabe in prison. It wasn't easy. The first visits were awkward. He cried. I didn't know what to say, but little by little we started to rebuild something. It wasn't the same as before. It was never going to be. But it was something. Gabe told me how Jason had manipulated him, how he had painted a picture of a better future if they only helped Grandma. He convinced me we were saving her from you, Gabe told me one afternoon. He said you were neglecting her, and I believed him because I have always been weak, Dad. I have always followed others. I sighed. Gabe, we all make mistakes, but the important thing is how we fix them. He nodded. I am going to fix it, Dad. I don't know how, but I will. Jason, on the other hand, never asked for forgiveness. He never showed remorse. I visited him once, only once. It was 6 months after his sentencing. I entered the visiting room. He was sitting on the other side of a glass. I grabbed the phone, he grabbed his. We looked at each other. What do you want? He asked me. His voice was cold. I took a deep breath. I wanted to see if there was anything left of the son I raised. He smiled, a bitter smile. That son died a long time ago, Dad, when you realized I wasn't perfect. I shook my head. You weren't perfect, but you were my son, and I loved you. And now? I stared at him. Now I don't know who you are anymore. He hung up the phone, got up, and left. I stood there watching him disappear through the door, and I knew I had lost him forever. Life went on. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. My mother regained her strength. She went back to cooking, tending the garden, laughing. One afternoon, while we were preparing dinner together, she told me, "Do you know what I learned from all this?" I stopped chopping onions. "What, Mom?" She looked at me. "That family is not blood. Family is who stays when everything collapses. Johnny flew from Italy without thinking. Grace left her life to be here. You fought against your own son to save me. That is family." I nodded. Eve always said that, my mother smiled. Eve was wise, wiser than all of us. And we kept cooking, in silence. But it was a comfortable silence, a silence of home. A year later, Gabe was released on parole. He came home, He knocked on the door. I opened. We looked at each other. He had red eyes. "Dad," he said, "I come to ask Grandma for forgiveness." I let him pass. My mother was in the living room. When she saw Gabe, she stood up. He knelt in front of her. "Grandma, sorry. Sorry for everything." My mother looked at him, and then she did something I didn't expect. She hugged him. "You are forgiven, son," she told him. "But don't forget, because scars remind us who we don't want to be." Gabe cried in her arms. And I, seeing that scene, understood what my mother had said. Family is who stays, and Gabe, despite everything, had stayed. Jason hadn't. Today, at 74 years old, I look back and I understand. I understand that pain teaches us more than happiness, that losing a son to his own actions hurts, but not as much as having lost my dignity. My mother is still here, with me, stronger than ever. Grace lives in the next room. Johnny visits every month. Gabe comes on Sundays for lunch, still carrying his guilt, but trying to be better. And Jason. Jason chose his path. I chose mine. And I learned that true love doesn't betray. It stays, even if it hurts. Even if everything collapses, it stays. And that, in the end, is the only thing that matters. And today I understand that family is not chosen by blood. It is chosen by who stays when everything collapses. My mother taught me that, and I am never going to forget it. And you? Has someone in your own family ever betrayed you? How did you overcome it? Tell us in the comments. If this story touched your heart, leave me your like and subscribe. Every day I share real stories that could be yours. Your comment gives me strength to continue. Thank you for being here, for listening until the end. See you in the next story.